dropping bombshells. You're dropping like life-changing bombshells from the grave. Hi everyone, my name is Danielle. Welcome to the channel. If you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button and let's get started. Last week I reviewed or just shared reflections of episodes 1 through 4. Some of my biggest takeaways in terms of things that I learned or things I appreciated. So you can check that out. And I read the book prior to watching the series. So if you want to see some of my reflections from the book, you can check that out. I'll put a link below for both of those videos. I feel like my memory is starting to just not be that great because as I continue to watch this series, I'm like, wait, what happened in the book? But I will say, having finished the full series, where they cut off season 1, you can tell where they're gonna pick up for season 2 because there's still way more in the actual book that happened that didn't happen in episodes 5 through 8. And I did look at a couple reviews people had on like TikTok and YouTube, and it seems like the general consensus from a lot of people is that they feel like the storyline is drawn out. Honestly, I didn't feel that way. It didn't bother me at all. I saw one person say that they felt like it could have been a movie. I see that. I could see how that could be a movie, but I could also see how it's a whole series. I think there's a lot of content, even just from reading the book, there's so many people's perspectives that you could go down a rabbit hole in any of those characters and have a full story. Starting with episode 5. Because I wrote down notes. I wrote down notes for the first 2 episodes. Benny was still dealing with Steve. I didn't realize they were going to still continue that story where he was going to show up again. And I was like, ooh, he has her in a cycle. Why is he here? Byron beat Steve down. Oof. When I watched that, I was concerned. I was like, is he going to kill him? And then I was like, what's going to happen with his career? Because he's such a front-facing public figure in his field. And so I was just like, what? What is going to happen? Because if he kills this man, he's not going to have a career. He's going to be in jail, which he ended up going to jail, which I don't remember that happening in the book. That might have happened in the book. I just don't remember. I don't like how Covey, which is the mother who died, who had all the secrets. I felt like Covey had such specific instructions on how they're supposed to listen to the recordings, in what order, with who at the table, before they could move on to the next recording. And I'm like, girl, you have a lot of demands for somebody who's dropping bombshells. You're dropping like life-changing bombshells from the grave. You didn't have the courage to do it in person, in real life, when you were alive. You're doing this from the grave, but you have so many stipulations on to how it's done. You're dropping life-changing bombshells. The bombshells are so intensely huge that they're going to warrant more questions. The oldest daughter, Matilda, she didn't know she was adopted. I don't remember that. I don't think I knew that she didn't know that she was adopted from the book. They could have changed it. Totally fine. But to me, if I'm just finding out I'm adopted, I'm half black, half Scottish, I was conceived as a result of a assault. Like there's so many things that have led to this, but you need to sit at this table and sit with your brothers and sisters to hear the rest of this thing before I keep moving forward. Girl, give them a chance to breathe and digest and process everything that you've said already. I understood why Byron felt angry, like, let's move on. Let's not wait for Mabel to keep going, because it's like, this is a lot for her to already take in. She don't want to be here, which I don't blame Mabel for not wanting to be there. That was a lot. She was dropping a lot of bombshells, but that she didn't have the courage to do in person. And I think there should have been more space for people to listen and process to those audios on their own without the demand of certain people being in the room before they move forward. I hope that makes sense. Episode 6. I loved when Byron was at that panel and he just flipped over that table. When I say flip over the table, I don't mean literally, I mean figuratively. Like, it was great. It was great. He said, Because the question was asked, he was at a panel, a diversity panel, and he was, that was a whole thing. But they asked him, what's it like to be a trailblazer? This man said, there's more to life than travel and making appearances. The day-to-day can be traumatizing. Say there's like 20 men on the stage. All of them are white. Byron's the only black person. So it was a visible representation of the pain and the experiences that Byron has in the workplace as a black man. Being the only person in the room who looks like you, it's stressful, it's lonely, I'm tired. At one point he was like, I'm tired of this. And his colleague, who is now his boss, tried to take the mic away from him at one point. He was like, nope. He took that mic back. The man who was moderating the panel tried to step in and be like, oh, well, thank you so much for this. And he's like, I'm not finished. I'm still speaking. Very Kamala Harris energy. I'm still speaking. After he finished talking, they turned to the audience. The camera went to the audience, and the first person who cheered him on was another black man. And I thought even that was so powerful, because it's like sometimes you can be in rooms and you'll have black people that are like, oh no, I'm kind of like the pick-me's, like, oh, I'm not like him. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll step over whoever I can to get to where I want. And this man sitting in the front row was like, yes, no, I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm here, right here with you. And I loved to see that. I really did. Okay, episode 7 was probably the most impactful to my soul. It was very centered around Kovi's experience when she was carrying Mabel. And she was in London, I want to say. And yeah, she was in London carrying Mabel. She got into a program for unwed mothers that was connected to, I want to say that was the Catholic Church. I had a girl named Irene who was also, like, the women were all in this pretty much the same boat. But I think this episode really highlighted the complexities of motherhood. So like racism, misogyny. And when she found out she was pregnant and she went to the doctor, and the doctor, he was like, he asked her something along the lines of, how did you get pregnant? Like, do you know the father? That kind of thing. And she was like, this happened as a result of an assault. My boss assaulted me. His response to her was as if it was her fault. It had a tinge of victim blaming. It was very interesting. There was like no sympathy from him towards her. Just very off-putting, which probably was meant to be reflective of the times. But Irene was a mother who she met, and Irene was experiencing motherhood from the standpoint of the father he decided he didn't want to be a father. And at first she was very connected to the baby. Kovi was not connected to her baby, which was Mabel, which is the oldest. She felt no connection to Mabel at all. And she was intentional about kind of keeping some distance. Like, she didn't want to hear the heartbeat. She didn't want to know. Like, she even referred to the baby as a thing at one point. Like, she was very disconnected. She wasn't eating enough to grow the baby in her stomach. She was just feeling very disconnected from her body and what was happening. Versus Irene was very much like, I want this baby. I have a plan to keep this baby. We're going to escape and all this other stuff. But then when it came time for both women to go into labor and give birth, Kovi felt this innate, like, oh my gosh, this is my baby. This is her name. Her name is Mabel Matilda. I want to keep her. That was heartbreaking when she couldn't keep her. And Irene was the opposite. Irene was like, Irene didn't want to breastfeed. Irene was just very put off by the idea of holding the baby, no name for the baby. She even at one point was just like the baby finally latched on, and she was like, she pushed the baby off. Like, she kind of snuck it to like get the baby off. The baby's starving. And Irene's like, ugh, get this baby off of me. Please let me go clean. Like, she'd rather go to work and do work than feed her baby. I felt multiple emotions watching that. I know women who did not take maternity leave when they had their babies, not because they couldn't, but because they did not want to. I know women who have struggled to breastfeed, who wanted to breastfeed and they couldn't. Like, it was very, very painful and they struggled with it. Irene was just deeply repulsed by all of it. She felt so disconnected, and it was so interesting how it flip-flopped. Like, at first she was like, oh, well, this is my baby, I want to keep him, blah, blah, blah. And then when the time came and the baby was here, it was just like, get this baby away from me. It was the total opposite. And I think that shows even the complexities of how motherhood can change a woman. Once the baby's actually here, how it can go one of two ways, in ways that you didn't see coming. Episode 7 was a lot. It was heavy. I thought it was probably the best out of all 8 episodes. The main character, Covey, Mia Isaac, she did her thing. She showed her range. I believed every moment of her acting in that episode. Not that I didn't before, but she brought her A game in that episode for sure. It was heart-wrenching. She really did an excellent job. Okay, episode 8. I think episode 7, she was like, okay, see you at the funeral. Mabel was saying that to Byron and Bunny. And I was like, wait a minute. They haven't buried the woman yet? A lot of the characters got on my nerves for different reasons at different times. But Lynette, I think it stood out to me that she, in a previous episode, she gave Byron a lot of grief for not standing up for himself when it came to the workplace and race. And I'm like, girl, you have a lot of heat for somebody who just lost their mom. And then when they're walking into the funeral of his mother, she drops the bombshell of, oh, I'm pregnant. And I don't know if I want to keep it. It was like so many things. And it's like, you really having this conversation now? That, I didn't like that either. I'm not a huge fan of Lynette so far. One of the last scenes was Mabel listening to a recording from Covey. Covey had a lot of recordings. And in this recording, Covey was telling her, like, I'm going to give you the information about your birth father. And in my soul, I was just like, I want her to F his life up. I want her to blow his life up. I want her to show up and blow his life up. He deserves it. For everything he did to harm Covey, only to find out that a child was conceived as a result of that. Blow his life up. I will be on the lookout for season 2. If you checked it out, I'd love to know what you thought of the series of season 1. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, what stood out to you, what didn't. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching today's episode. If you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I will see you next week. Bye.